Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. His fleet of 47 ships moved through space like a pack of wolves hunting in the dark. This was the furthest any human fleet had ever traveled from Earth, and Morrison felt the weight of that responsibility on his shoulders. "Sir, we're picking up something strange on the sensors," called out Lieutenant Danny Hayes from his station. The young officer's voice carried a note of confusion that made Morrison turn around. "What kind of strange?" Morrison asked, walking over to examine the readings himself. "There's a massive energy signature about 3 light-years ahead. It's not showing up on any of our star charts, but the readings are off the scale. Whatever it is, it's big." Captain Lisa Rodriguez, Morrison's intelligence officer, looked up from her own console. "Admiral, I'm getting multiple signals from that direction. At least 4 different transmission types, none of them matching any known alien communication patterns." Morrison frowned. The human fleet had been exploring this sector for 3 months, mapping new star systems and looking for habitable worlds. They had encountered a few minor alien species, but nothing that would generate readings like this. "Navigation error, sir," announced Ensign Mike Carter from the helm. "We're about 12 degrees off course from our planned route. The gravitational fields in this region are stronger than expected." "How did we get so far off course?" Morrison demanded. "Unknown, sir. Our instruments have been acting up for the past 6 hours. Something in this area is interfering with our navigation systems." Morrison made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "Set course for the energy signature. Full scan as we approach. I want to know what we're dealing with." The fleet moved forward through space, and within hours, they began to see something that should not have existed. Massive structures floated in the void between stars, each one larger than Earth's moon. Ships moved between them like insects around a hive, but these ships were unlike anything in human experience. "My God," whispered Dr. Nancy Peterson, the fleet's chief scientist. "Admiral, I'm reading 4 completely different types of technology. The materials, the energy signatures, even the basic physics principles appear to be different for each group." Rodriguez's fingers flew across her console as she intercepted communications. "Sir, I'm picking up what sounds like military communications. 4 distinct languages, but the translation computers are having trouble with them. The languages are too advanced, too complex." Morrison watched as the alien structures came into clearer view. What he saw made his blood run cold. These were not peaceful space stations or research facilities. They were military bases, each one bristling with weapons that could destroy entire planets. "How many ships are we looking at?" Morrison asked. "Approximately 15,000, sir," Carter replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Spread across 4 different fleets." Morrison had commanded fleets before, but never had he seen anything like this. Each alien fleet was larger than the entire human space navy. Worse, the readings showed that their weapons were centuries ahead of anything Earth had developed. "They're not fighting each other," Rodriguez observed. "All 4 fleets are positioned defensively, but they're not targeting each other. They're waiting for something." "Waiting for what?" Morrison asked. "I don't know, sir, but based on the communication patterns, it looks like they're preparing for a coordinated operation. Something big." As if in response to her words, the alien communications suddenly increased in intensity. Rodriguez worked frantically to decode what she could, her face growing pale as the translation computers began to make sense of the messages. "Admiral," she said quietly, "they're planning to start a war. Not just any war. They're calling it the final convergence. Each fleet believes they're going to win, and they plan to destroy the other 3 completely." Morrison stared at the screen, watching 15,000 alien warships preparing for a battle that would reshape the galaxy. His own fleet of 47 ships seemed pathetically small in comparison. "Sir," Hayes called out, "they've detected us. We're being scanned by all 4 fleets." The bridge fell silent as everyone waited for the alien response. Morrison knew that if these advanced civilizations wanted to destroy his fleet, they could do it without breaking formation. The humans were completely outmatched in every way that mattered. A new voice came over the communication system, speaking in broken but understandable English. "Human vessels, You have entered the Nexus sector. This area is forbidden to lesser species. You will leave immediately or be destroyed. Morrison looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They were scared, but they were also determined. These were the best officers in the human fleet, and they had volunteered for this mission knowing they might never return to Earth. "Sir," Rodriguez said softly, "if these 4 fleets go to war, the destruction will be unimaginable. Billions of lives will be lost across dozens of star systems." Morrison nodded slowly. He understood the situation perfectly. The human fleet had stumbled into something far beyond their understanding or ability to influence. The smart thing to do would be to retreat immediately and report back to Earth Command. But Morrison also knew that sometimes the smart thing was not the right thing. "Helm, maintain position," he ordered. "Communications, open a channel to all. 4 fleets." "Sir?" Carter asked, uncertain. "You heard me. Open the channel." When the connection was established, Morrison took a deep breath and spoke words that would echo through galactic history. "This is Admiral Jack Morrison of the United Earth Fleet. We are not leaving. If you want to destroy us, you'll have to do it while we're watching. Because someone needs to witness what you're about to do." The alien fleets did not respond immediately. Morrison could imagine the confusion among their commanders. They had expected the humans to flee like any sensible species would. Instead, they had just volunteered to observe the greatest military engagement in galactic history. Morrison turned to his crew. "Red alert, battle stations. We're staying to watch this war, and if we're lucky, maybe we can find a way to make a difference." The crew moved to their positions with quiet efficiency. They knew they were probably going to die, but they also knew they were making history. The human fleet had arrived where no one was meant to arrive, and now they were going to seize the stage in the greatest drama the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Morrison stood in the war room surrounded by his senior officers. The holographic display showed the positions of all 4 alien fleets, each one containing thousands of ships that could destroy his entire force without effort. "We need to be smart about this," Morrison said quietly. "We can't fight them directly, but we can't just sit here and do nothing either." Commander Pete Williams, his tactical advisor, pointed at the display. "Sir, I've been studying their movement patterns for the past 18 hours. Each fleet operates according to very specific rules. They never change their formations, never vary their patrol routes, never do anything unexpected." "What does that tell us?" Morrison asked. "They've been fighting each other for so long that they've forgotten how to adapt. They know exactly what their enemies will do because they've been doing the same things for thousands of years." Captain Lisa Rodriguez nodded in agreement. "The communication intercepts support that theory. Each fleet commander is preparing for battles they've fought dozens of times before. They're not planning for surprises because they don't expect any." Morrison smiled grimly. "Then let's give them some surprises. Pete, activate Protocol Mongoose." Williams grinned. Protocol Mongoose was a strategy developed by human military theorists for fighting superior enemies. Instead of meeting strength with strength, it involved using speed, deception, and unpredictability to confuse and frustrate the opponent. "All ships, scatter formation," Morrison ordered over the fleet communications. "Every vessel is to operate independently. Stay hidden, stay mobile, and watch everything these aliens do. Learn their patterns, study their weaknesses, but do not engage unless directly threatened." The human fleet broke apart like a school of fish, each ship heading in a different direction. The alien fleets barely noticed. To them, the humans were just another minor species running away from their betters. 3 days later, Chief Engineer Karen Stone called Morrison to the engine room. She was covered in grease and had the wild look of someone who had been working without sleep for days. "Admiral, you need to see this," she said, leading him to a bank of instruments that were humming with unusual energy. "What am I looking at?" Morrison asked. "Those alien ships are putting out exotic radiation that our sensors never encountered before. According to everything we know about physics, this radiation should have fried our systems hours ago. But it didn't?" Stone shook her head. "Not only did it not fry our systems, our ships are actually absorbing it. The radiation is making our engines more efficient, our shields stronger and our weapons more powerful. It's like our technology was designed to work with this energy, even though we've never seen it before. Morrison stared at the readings. How is that possible? I don't know, sir. But I have a theory. Human technology was built to be adaptable because we never knew what we'd encounter in space. We designed our systems to work with whatever power sources we could find. The aliens built their technology to be perfect, but only under specific conditions. So their perfection is actually a weakness? Yes, sir. They can't adapt to unexpected situations because they never needed to. We can adapt because that's all we've ever done. Captain Amy Clark's voice came over the communication system. Admiral, this is Clark aboard the Defiance. I've found something you need to see. Morrison hurried to the bridge and opened a channel to Clark's destroyer. Her ship was one of the fastest in the fleet, and she had been scouting the edges of the alien formation. What have you found, Captain? Morrison asked. I've been following supply ships from one of the fleets. They led me to what looks like a nursery world. Sir, these aliens aren't just planning to defeat their enemies. They're planning to consume them. The image on the screen showed a planet covered in massive organic structures. Ships were landing and taking off constantly, carrying what looked like biological samples. I managed to get close enough to intercept some of their data transmissions. Clark continued. Each fleet isn't trying to win this war in the traditional sense. They want to absorb the other three fleets completely. Take their technology, their knowledge, even their genetic material, and add it to themselves. Dr. Nancy Peterson's voice joined the conversation from her laboratory. That explains the biological readings I've been getting. All 4 fleets show signs of genetic manipulation. They're not really 4 different species. They're 4 different versions of the same original species. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. They're not trying to defeat their enemies. They're trying to reunite their species by force. Exactly, Peterson replied, and they think their version is the only correct one. They want to eliminate the other 3 versions and create what they consider the perfect form of their people. Williams looked up from his tactical display. Sir, this changes everything. They're not fighting for territory or resources. They're fighting for the right to exist. Each fleet believes the others are genetic mistakes that need to be corrected. Morrison nodded slowly. Which means they'll never surrender, never negotiate, and never stop fighting until only one fleet is left. Over the next week, the human ships began small raids on the alien supply lines. They didn't try to cause major damage, just enough to gather intelligence and salvage alien technology. Each ship captain was given strict orders to make their attacks look like they came from one of the other alien fleets. Commander Roy Baker, leading the Cyber Warfare Division from his ship, discovered that the aliens had incredibly advanced computer systems, but they were all designed to work perfectly within expected parameters. When something unexpected happened, like a human virus that operated on completely different principles, their systems couldn't adapt fast enough to stop it. It's like they built the most advanced locks in the galaxy, Baker reported, but they forgot that someone might try to break down the door instead of picking the lock. The human raids began to have an unexpected effect. Each alien fleet started blaming the others for the strange attacks. Their paranoia grew as they couldn't understand why their enemies were suddenly using tactics that made no sense. Captain Rodriguez intercepted increasingly frantic communications between the alien commanders. They were confused and angry. Each fleet convinced that the others had developed new weapons or strategies that violated the ancient rules of their conflict. They're starting to make mistakes, Rodriguez reported. They're so focused on figuring out what their enemies are planning that they're not paying attention to what's actually happening. Morrison gathered his officers for another planning session. On the display, the alien fleets had moved closer together, their formations tighter and more aggressive than before. The war is going to start soon, Morrison said. When it does, we need to be ready. We can't stop it, but maybe we can influence how it ends. What do you mean, sir? Williams asked. Morrison looked at the faces of his officers, these brave men and women who had followed him into the most dangerous situation in human history. We're going to do something that no one expects. We're going to help them remember who they used to be before they forgot how to be the same species. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications of what Morrison was suggesting. They were going to try to end a war between 4 fleets that commanded enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. "Sir," Stone said quietly. "That's either brilliant or completely insane." Morrison smiled. "In my experience, the best plans are usually both." The war began at exactly 800 Galactic Standard Time, just as the alien computers had calculated it would. Admiral Morrison watched from the bridge of the Vengeance as 15,000 ships opened fire on each other across the void of space. The destruction was beyond anything human imagination could have prepared him for. Entire planets cracked under the force of crystal weapons that turned matter into energy. Bioships released clouds of plague that converted whole star systems into organic processing centers. Machine fleets fired computational viruses that turned enemy weapons against their own ships. Energy beings phased battle stations directly into the cores of enemy worlds. "Dear God," whispered Dr. Nancy Peterson as she watched the readings from her science station. "They're not just destroying military targets, they're sterilizing everything. Planets, moons, asteroid colonies, space stations full of civilians. Captain." Lisa Rodriguez looked up from her communications console with a grim expression. "Admiral, I'm intercepting distress calls from hundreds of non-combatant vessels caught in the battle zones. Passenger ships, cargo freighters, even hospital ships. The 4 fleets are treating them all as legitimate targets." Morrison clenched his fists as he watched the slaughter unfold. This was not war as humans understood it. This was extinction on a scale that his mind could barely process. "Sir," Commander Pete Williams called out from his tactical station. "Something's wrong with their attack patterns. The alien fleets are not performing as efficiently as their previous exercises suggested they would." "What do you mean?" Morrison asked. "Look at these formations. The Crystal Fleet should have broken through the Bio Fleet's defensive line 20 minutes ago, but they're having trouble coordinating their attack. The Machine Fleet's computational attacks are being delayed by several seconds, which is throwing off their timing. And the Energy Fleet keeps losing ships that just disappear from their formations." Morrison studied the battle display more carefully. Williams was right. Despite their overwhelming technological superiority, the alien fleets were making mistakes that should have been impossible for such advanced civilizations. "Commander?" Roy Baker's voice came over the communication system from his position aboard the destroyer Liberty. "Admiral, I think I know what's happening. Those small disruptions we've been causing to their supply lines and communication networks over the past week are starting to add up." "Explain," Morrison ordered. "Each fleet operates on the assumption that their systems will work perfectly. When we introduced small errors into their networks, their computers didn't know how to compensate. They're not designed to handle chaos, they're trying to fight a perfect war, but we've made perfection impossible." Morrison felt a spark of hope for the first time since the battle began. "You're saying our sabotage is actually working?" "More than working, sir. It's cascading. Every small error we introduced is causing bigger errors as their systems try to correct for problems they don't understand. Their own perfectionism is making them vulnerable to chaos." Captain Amy Clark's voice joined the conversation from her position near the battle zone. "Admiral, I'm seeing something else. The alien fleets are so focused on fighting each other according to their ancient patterns that they're not adapting to the unexpected problems. When something goes wrong, they just try the same solution harder, instead of trying something different." Morrison made a decision that would change the course of the battle. "All ships, implement Phase 2 of Protocol Mongoose. We're going active." The human fleet emerged from hiding and began moving through the battle zone, but not to join the fight. Instead, they started rescuing the civilian ships that were caught in the crossfire. "Sir," Lieutenant Danny Hayes called out from his sensor station, "the UES Courage just pulled 300 refugees from a damaged passenger liner. The Defiance is evacuating a medical transport. All our ships are reporting successful rescue operations." The alien fleets barely noticed the human rescue efforts at first. They were too busy trying to destroy each other to pay attention to what they considered an insignificant species. But as more and more civilian ships escaped the battle zones under human protection, the alien commanders began to take notice. Colonel Steve Martinez led the ground operations from his command ship, the Ranger. His Marines were boarding damaged, alien vessels and evacuating survivors regardless of which fleet they belong to. Admiral, Martinez reported, we've rescued over 50,000 civilian aliens so far. But sir, something strange is happening. The aliens we're rescuing keep asking us the same question. Why are we saving their enemies too? Morrison understood immediately. They can't comprehend why we would rescue people from all 4 fleets instead of choosing sides. Dr. Peterson's voice was excited as she called from her laboratory. Admiral, I've been analyzing genetic samples from the rescued civilians. My theory was correct. All 4 fleets are definitely the same species. The differences between them are artificial, created through genetic manipulation over thousands of years. How artificial? Morrison asked. Very artificial. If I didn't know better, I'd say someone deliberately split this species into 4 groups and then made them forget they were ever related. The genetic markers all point back to a single origin point. Morrison felt pieces of a larger puzzle falling into place. Someone wanted them to fight each other, but who would do that, and why? The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Rodriguez intercepted a transmission from deep within one of the alien command ships. The message was in Maya, an ancient language that the computer had difficulty translating. But when it finally decoded the words, everyone on the bridge fell silent. The final experiment approaches completion, the message read. The 4 test groups have developed as predicted. When only one remains, we will know which evolutionary path produces the strongest result. The architects will return to claim their perfected children. Morrison stared at the translated message. They're not fighting a war. They're performing an experiment. Someone called the architects split them into 4 groups thousands of years ago to see which version would prove superior in combat. Williams looked up from his tactical display with horror on his face. Sir, if that's true, then this war isn't about reunification or genetic purity. It's about proving which group deserves to survive. The architects are using these people as test subjects. The battle raged on around them, but Morrison's mind was racing. The human fleet had stumbled into something far more sinister than a civil war. They had discovered a galactic-scale experiment in forced evolution, with billions of lives hanging in the balance. All ships, Morrison ordered, continue rescue operations, but I want every piece of data we can gather about these architects. If someone is manipulating this entire war, we need to know who they are and how to stop them. As the human ships moved through the chaos of battle, saving lives and gathering intelligence, Morrison realized that his small fleet had become the only force in the galaxy fighting for something other than genetic supremacy. They were fighting for the right of all 4 fleets to exist as they were, without being forced to prove their worth through violence. The stage was set for humanity's greatest gambit. Admiral Morrison called his senior officers to the war room for the most dangerous meeting in human history. The holographic display showed the ongoing battle between the 4 alien fleets, with human rescue ships moving through the chaos like tiny sparks of light in a storm of destruction. We know the truth now, Morrison said, his voice heavy with the weight of what they had discovered. This entire war is an experiment. The architects split one species into 4 groups thousands of years ago and have been waiting to see which version would prove strongest in battle. Captain Lisa Rodriguez pulled up the intercepted transmissions on her datapad. The communications we've decoded suggest the architects are planning to return once only one fleet remains. They'll take the survivors and use them to create what they consider the perfect species. Commander Pete Williams shook his head in disgust. They're treating billions of sentient beings like laboratory animals, making them fight to the death just to satisfy scientific curiosity. Dr. Nancy Peterson's voice was quiet but determined. Admiral, I've been studying the genetic data from all the refugees we've rescued. The 4 fleets aren't naturally different species. They're artificial variations of the same people. Someone deliberately changed their DNA, their brain chemistry, even their basic instincts to make them hate each other. Morrison looked around the table at his officers. These men and women had followed him into the most dangerous situation any human had ever faced, and now he was about to ask them to do something even more dangerous. I have a plan, Morrison said, but it requires us to do something that goes against every survival instinct we have. We need to make ourselves the primary target of all 4 fleets simultaneously. The room fell silent. Commander Roy Baker was the first to speak. "Sir, that sounds like suicide." "It would be suicide if our goal was to win a traditional battle," Morrison replied. "But our goal is different. We need to force all 4 fleets to stop fighting each other and start thinking about what they're really doing." Chief Engineer Karen Stone leaned forward in her chair. "What exactly are you proposing, Admiral?" Morrison activated the main display, showing a detailed schematic of their plan. "We're going to broadcast Dr. Peterson's genetic research across every communication network in the sector. We're going to show them the truth about who they really are, but the only way to make sure they all receive the message is to get their attention first." "And how do we get their attention?" Williams asked, though his expression suggested he already knew the answer. "We attack all 4 fleets at the same time," Morrison said simply. Captain Amy Clark's image appeared on the communication screen from her ship. "Admiral, our entire fleet combined has less firepower than a single one of their destroyers. How can we possibly attack 4 fleets and survive long enough to broadcast anything?" Morrison smiled grimly. "We don't attack their ships, Captain. We attack their assumptions. For thousands of years, these fleets have fought according to rigid patterns. They know exactly what their enemies will do, because they've been doing the same things for millennia. But they have no idea how to respond to something completely unexpected." Stone's eyes widened as she understood the plan. "You want us to be the chaos factor, do things that make no tactical sense, force them to break their patterns." "Exactly. While they're trying to figure out what we're doing, Captain Billy Thompson will take the carrier Resilience to the center of the battle zone and deploy our quantum transmitter." Thompson's voice came over the communication system from his ship. "Sir, that transmitter is our only way to broadcast the genetic data to all 4 fleets simultaneously. If I lose it, the plan fails." "I know, Captain. That's why your mission is the most important one. The rest of us will be providing distraction." Dr. Peterson stood up from her chair. "Admiral, I want to modify the transmission. Instead of just broadcasting genetic data, I want to include something else. Human memories." "What kind of memories?" Morrison asked. "Memories of reconciliation. Times in human history when enemies became friends, when different peoples learned to work together, instead of fighting. If these aliens are going to understand the truth about themselves, they need to see an example of how to move beyond conflict." Morrison nodded. "Do it. But remember, once we start this plan, there's no going back. The moment we attack all 4 fleets, they'll turn their full attention on us. We'll be facing the combined firepower of the most advanced military forces in the galaxy." Commander Greg Foster, who led the diplomatic corps, spoke up. "Sir, what if they don't listen? What if we broadcast the truth and they decide to destroy us anyway?" Morrison was quiet for a moment, considering the question. "Then at least we'll have tried. Someone needs to stand up to the architects in their experiment. Someone needs to say that these people have the right to choose their own destiny." Over the next 6 hours, the human fleet prepared for the most audacious military operation in their history. Every ship was modified with the exotic energy they had been absorbing from the alien technology. Stone's engineering teams worked frantically to jury-rig weapons that could penetrate alien shields, not to destroy, but to disable and confuse. Baker and his cyber warfare teams prepared computer viruses designed to temporarily overwhelm alien systems without causing permanent damage. Their goal was not to win a battle, but to create enough chaos to get the aliens' attention. Martinez and his Marines prepared for boarding operations, not to capture enemy ships, but to place transmitter relays that would boost the quantum broadcast signal. As the final preparations were completed, Morrison stood on the bridge of the Vengeance and looked out at his small fleet. 47 ships against 15,000. It should have been hopeless, but Morrison had learned something important during their time in the Nexus sector. Advanced technology was not the same thing as advanced thinking. The alien fleets were more powerful than humanity could ever hope to be. But they had forgotten how to imagine solutions that didn't involve violence. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison," he announced over the fleet communications. "Today we do something that has never been done before. We're going to end a war not by winning it, but by helping the combatants remember who they used to be. We're going to remind an entire species that they were once one people, and they can be again." The human fleet moved into position around the alien battle zone. 4 massive fleets continued their deadly dance of destruction, unaware that their fate was about to be decided by a species they considered too primitive to matter. Morrison took a deep breath and gave the order that would change galactic history. All ships commenced the human gambit. Let's show them what we're made of. The combined firepower of 4 galactic superpowers turned toward the human fleet like the wrath of angry gods. Admiral Morrison watched on his main screen as thousands of alien weapons locked onto his 47 ships. By every law of physics and warfare, his fleet should have been destroyed in seconds. Instead, something impossible happened. The human ships began to dance. Captain Amy Clark's destroyer Defiance spun through a formation of crystal ships, firing not at their hulls, but at their weapon arrays, causing them to discharge harmlessly into space. The aliens had never seen anyone deliberately waste their shots, and their targeting computers couldn't predict such illogical behavior. Commander Roy Baker's cyber attacks flooded the alien networks with human music, poetry, and mathematical equations that made no sense to their advanced systems. The aliens' computers tried to decode what they thought were battle plans, but instead found themselves processing Earth's cultural heritage. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Danny Hayes from his sensor station, "the alien fleets are having trouble coordinating their attacks. They keep trying to avoid hitting each other while targeting us, but our movement patterns are forcing them to choose between accuracy and friendly fire." Morrison smiled grimly. The aliens' precision was becoming their weakness. They were so afraid of damaging each other that they couldn't effectively target the chaotic human fleet. Captain Billy Thompson's voice came over the communications from the carrier Resilience. "Admiral, I'm making my run to the center of the battle zone. The quantum transmitter is ready, but I need more time to reach the optimal broadcast position." "You'll have it, Captain," Morrison replied. "All ships, increase chaos protocol. Make them think we're completely insane." Chief Engineer Karen Stone's modifications proved their worth as human ships absorbed impossible amounts of alien energy and redirected it in ways that defied the aliens' understanding of physics. The human vessels glowed with absorbed power, becoming brighter and more dangerous with each passing moment. Dr. Nancy Peterson's voice was excited as she called from her laboratory. "Admiral, the quantum transmitter is working better than expected. The alien energy in this sector is amplifying our broadcast range. When we activate it, every ship in the battle zone will receive the transmission directly into their computer systems." The alien response was swift and brutal. Realizing that these primitive humans were somehow interfering with their ancient war, all 4 fleets began focusing their attacks on the human ships. Crystal beams, bioplagues, computational viruses, and phase weapons converged on Morrison's fleet from every direction. But the humans had learned something important during their weeks in the Nexus sector. They had learned to use the aliens' own power against them. Captain Rodriguez's tactical display showed the impossible truth. "Admiral, our ships are not just surviving these attacks, we're getting stronger. Every alien weapon that hits us is being absorbed and converted into shield energy." Morrison understood what was happening. Human technology had been built to adapt and survive in unknown conditions. The exotic alien weapons were just another unknown condition that human engineering could learn to handle. Colonel Steve Martinez's Marines began boarding damaged alien ships, not to capture them, but to install transmitter relays. Each relay would boost the quantum broadcast signal, ensuring that every alien in the sector would receive Dr. Peterson's message. "Admiral," Martinez reported, "the aliens we're rescuing from damaged ships are starting to ask questions. They want to know why we're saving people from all 4 fleets instead of choosing a side." "What are you telling them?" Morrison asked. "The truth, sir, that we don't see 4 different species. We see one people who forgot they were family." Captain Thompson's voice was strained as he reported from the Resilience. "Admiral, I'm taking heavy fire, but I've reached the broadcast position. Dr. Peterson, are you ready?" "Ready, Captain. Initiating quantum transmission in 3, 2, 1 now." The transmission that followed changed everything. Every alien ship in the sector suddenly received a flood of information directly into their computer systems. Genetic data proving their common origin, historical records showing how they had been deliberately separated, and most powerful of all, human memories of reconciliation and peace. The alien leaders experienced something they had not felt for thousands of years. They remembered what it was like to be one people. They saw through human memories how enemies could become friends, how differences could be celebrated instead of eliminated, how diversity could create strength instead of weakness. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The four fleets stopped firing on each other and began targeting only the human ships. But they were no longer trying to destroy the humans. They were trying to stop the broadcast, desperate to prevent more memories from awakening their forgotten identity. Captain Clark's destroyer was badly damaged but still fighting. "Admiral, they're not shooting to kill anymore. They're trying to disable our transmitter without destroying us completely." Morrison realized what was happening. The aliens were not protecting humanity out of mercy. They were terrified of remembering who they used to be. The broadcast was forcing them to confront 3,000 years of programmed hatred and artificial division, but it was too late to stop the truth. Captain Thompson linked the Resilience's main computer directly to the quantum transmitter, multiplying the broadcast power beyond anything the aliens could gamify. Every communication relay in the sector carried the message of shared origin and peaceful coexistence. The final convergence ended not with victory or defeat, but with recognition. The four fleet commanders, their minds flooded with suppressed memories and human examples of cooperation, began to understand what they had become and what they could be again. Admiral Morrison opened a channel to all four fleets. "This is Admiral Jack Morrison of the United Earth Fleet. We formally invite you to join us in orbit around our homeworld, not as enemies seeking to prove superiority, but as people seeking to heal an ancient wound." The response came from all four fleet commanders simultaneously. "We accept." 3 months later, Morrison stood on the observation deck of Earth Station 1, watching as the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy worked together to repair the damage of their ancient war. The reunion was not easy, and there were still conflicts to resolve, but the killing had stopped. The human fleet had seized the stage when no one was meant to arrive, and in doing so, they had created space for everyone to find their place in a larger story. The architect's experiment had failed, not because of superior firepower, but because of superior imagination. Morrison smiled as he watched alien and human children playing together in the station's recreation areas. Sometimes the greatest victories came not from winning wars, but from helping others remember how to stop fighting them.